It was called the untouchable jet, a marvel of engineering. Flawless, unbreakable, until June 12, 2025. A Boeing 787 Dreamliner tore through the sky from Ahmedabad, India, then plummeted. No scream, no signal, just a silent drop, followed by flames. 274 souls vanished in seconds. One survived. The wreckage smoldered. Blackened steel. Melted dreams. Something wasn't right. A perfect plane doesn't just fall. What snapped its wings? Was it a chance? Or something darker? The black box held the answer. And it wasn't what anyone expected. On June 13, 2025, the black box from Air India Flight 171 was pulled from the wreckage, and it uncovered a terrifying truth. The plane's flaps retracted just 14 seconds after takeoff, causing it to lose lift and crash. Yet the cockpit gauges showed they were still out. Recovery teams found the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder under heaps of twisted metal, still working despite the chaos. Within hours, experts worldwide gathered to figure out what went wrong. Flaps are like extra wings that help a plane take off safely, giving it the lift it needs at slow speeds. When they retract too early, the plane can't stay up and falls fast. That happened here, but the pilots didn't know because their instruments lied. A team in New Delhi, including people from the US National Transportation Safety Board and the UK's Air Accidents Investigation Branch, pored over the data to find answers. The cockpit recording started normally. One pilot said, "Gear up," and the other replied calmly. Then a chime rang out, followed by another, and soon the voices grew tense. They shouted commands over each other while alarms screamed in the background. The black box gave investigators over 1,200 details, like altitude, speed, and flap position, showing the plane was doomed almost from the start. The pilots called Mayday just once, their tone steady but urgent, before silence took over. What makes this chilling is that the pilots had no idea a disaster was coming. They trusted their screens, but those screens were wrong, and that trust led them straight into tragedy. The technology they relied on daily had turned against them worse. But the black box only showed what happened. The real heartbreak lies in how the pilots were tricked. The cockpit gauges fooled the crew into thinking the plane was in a safe setup, and that false belief drove them to make deadly choices in their final moments. The screens showed the flaps were extended, so the pilots didn't try to fix what they didn't know was broken. Everything unraveled in 60 seconds, leaving no time to react or save the flight. As the plane lifted off, the crew followed their usual steps, but soon the warning bells started ringing. The cockpit voice recorder caught their growing panic. Orders overlapped, alarms wouldn't stop, and they scrambled to take control. They pushed buttons and pulled levers, desperate to climb, but the automated systems didn't back them up like they were supposed to. The plane kept dropping instead. In those last seconds, the pilots never gave up. They fought with everything they had. But they were battling an enemy they couldn't see, betrayed by the tools they'd used 1,000 times before. Technology was their guide, and it led them to the end. Yet, the question lingered. What made the system lie to them in the first place? The crash might have come from a broken sensor or actuator, or maybe from maintenance that wasn't done right, using refurbished parts instead of brand new ones. A month before the flight, the left flap actuator got serviced, but the team used overhauled pieces, older parts fixed up to work again. On top of that, a test to check the torque sensor got delayed because the correct tools weren't there, and no one bothered to reschedule it. That skipped test could have been the tipping point. Insiders say a flap position sensor might have fed bad info to the plane's computer, making it think everything was fine when it wasn't. Investigators are investigating whether this was a flaw in the plane's design or just sloppy upkeep. Either way, it's a haunting thought. Boeing's had trouble with tech before. Crashes years ago pointed to software glitches, but this feels different. The black box showed the engines running strong and the pilots doing their jobs. Yet something small, like a worn-out part or a missed check, might have sparked this nightmare. Could one tiny oversight have stolen so many lives? But beyond the gears and wires, there's a human story of trust shattered and lives lost when the system failed. This crash isn't just about a plane going down. It's about why it happened and what went wrong long before takeoff. As experts keep searching, the answers might bring some peace, or raise even more challenging questions. Boeing once stood for innovation, safety, and precision, but now experts are raising a familiar red flag. They say the company might fall into the same dangerous mindset that caused the 737 MAX disasters in 2018 and 2019. Those crashes, which killed 346 people, were caused by a faulty system called MCAS. It pushed the planes into nosedives based on incorrect sensor readings and didn't let the pilots fight back. At the time, Boeing promised to fix everything: more training, better software, stronger checks. But with the crash of Air India Flight 171, many wonder if anything changed. This time, there was no MCAS involved. The Dreamliner didn't rely on the same software, but the failure came from a similar place: too much trust in automation. The pilots followed their instruments, believing the plane was climbing safely. They didn't know that the flaps had already folded in, killing lift and setting them up for a fall. Their systems didn't warn them in time. It felt like watching history repeat itself, only with a different aircraft and a different error. Critics now talk about automation arrogance. This is the idea that technology will consistently outperform human judgment. Boeing seemed to believe this, focusing on systems and screens while training and real-world testing took a back seat. With Flight 171, the display screens looked fine, but reality was not. The pilots were flying blind, betrayed by the tech meant to help them. And the Dreamliner crash wasn't the only red flag in 2025. In January, a 737 MAX 9 made headlines when an emergency exit plug flew off midair over Oregon. The cabin depressurized, oxygen masks dropped, and chaos erupted. Thankfully, no one died, but the event shocked the industry. Then, in May, a Boeing cargo plane was shot down while flying over Darfur. While that incident wasn't Boeing's fault, it added more pressure to a company already struggling with trust and safety concerns. 3 serious incidents in less than 6 months have shaken confidence in Boeing. People wonder if this is just bad luck, or if the company has deeper issues that it hasn't fixed. The crash of Flight 171 only added fuel to the fire, sparking a wave of global responses. The world's top aviation authorities acted quickly. Within hours of the crash, the FAA in the US, EASA in Europe, and DGCA in India issued emergency orders. All Boeing 787 Dreamliners, especially their flap systems, had to be checked immediately. These are the same systems that failed on Flight 171. The FAA focused on the sensors and motors responsible for flap movement. Investigators wanted to know if other planes had the same hidden problems. EASA and DGCA went further, ordering complete checks of entire Dreamliner fleets. These weren't routine inspections. They were high-priority missions to prevent another disaster. Air India grounded 4 Dreamliners for detailed inspections. 2 of those planes were found to have issues in their flap control motors. While not as severe as what happened to Flight 171, the similarities were alarming. It raised the question: how many more were out there if 2 planes had flaws? This wasn't just one country acting on its own. The checks were coordinated under the Chicago Convention, a global agreement that ensures countries work together on aviation safety. The US sent experts, Europe shared its data, and India led the investigation. It was a rare moment of complete cooperation. Everyone knew that a single missed error could lead to hundreds of lost lives. The stakes were enormous. Airlines had to reshuffle schedules, cancel flights, and assign different aircraft to routes. Maintenance crews worked around the clock. Mechanics tore into flap systems, tested sensors, and checked every wire. The goal wasn't just to fix planes, but to restore public confidence. But the inspections also brought fear. What else would have been overlooked if these planes had been found faulty so easily? Some experts feared that these emergency checks were just temporary fixes. They worried that the next crash might already be in motion unless the root cause was found and solved. That fear turned into outrage when people looked deeper into Boeing's recent history. The company wasn't only under fire for its planes. It was also dealing with the mysterious death of a man who had tried to expose problems long before this crash happened. John Barnett had worked at Boeing's Charleston factory, where many Dreamliners were built. He was a quality control inspector and raised serious concerns about skipped safety tests and rushed production. Barnett claimed that critical flaws were being ignored and spoke out within the company, the media, and the government. In March 2025, right before he was supposed to testify in court, Barnett was found dead in a hotel parking lot. Police called it a suicide, but many people weren't convinced. He had told reporters he felt threatened and believed Boeing was trying to silence him. His death sent shockwaves through the aviation world. Safety advocates demanded a full investigation. They believed Barnett had documents and evidence that might have forced changes in Boeing's operation. With him gone, those secrets were buried, at least for now. Some feared that the same warnings he raised were linked to the crash of Flight 171. As if that weren't enough, Boeing's financial health also hit. After the Dreamliner crash, the company's stock price dropped sharply. Airlines began asking hard questions about their orders. Passengers were seen checking which plane model they were flying on before boarding. Trust was broken. The FAA came under fire too. Its ODA program, which allows Boeing employees to self-certify safety checks, was slammed by critics. People argued that letting a company police itself was dangerous. They said it was time for stronger, independent oversight. The picture looked grim. 3 major incidents in a short span, a whistleblower's death, and a system that allowed these problems to stay hidden. The Dreamliner, once a symbol of modern aviation, had become a warning sign. Now, everyone wanted answers. Could Boeing fix its mistakes and rebuild trust? Or had it gone too far down a dangerous path? That question leads us to the next chapter of this story. How Air India and the Tata Group responded to the crisis, and what it means for the future of aviation in India and beyond. Air India and its parent company, Tata Group, are facing a massive trust crisis with the public, while working hard to compensate victims and check their entire Dreamliner fleet. Imagine a company trying to climb back from years of bad news, delays, money troubles, and unhappy passengers. Tata Group stepped in with big plans, bringing new planes and fresh ideas. For a while, it looked like things might turn around. Then Flight 171 crashed, and all that hope came tumbling down. The public didn't hold back. People stopped trusting Air India almost overnight, wondering if the airline cared enough about safety. To tackle this, Air India promised to be open about everything, they started inspecting all their Boeing 787 planes, looking for anything that could go wrong. On top of that, they set up a fund to help those hurt by the disaster. Families of the passengers got support, and so did the survivor, Vishvash Ramesh, with things like counseling and medical care for the long haul. Each family of the 274 died passengers received 1 crore rupees, about $120,000. That's a significant amount, but it wasn't just for them. Another fund was created for the 33 people killed on the ground, plus Vishvash, making sure no one was forgotten. These numbers show Air India's effort, yet money alone can't fix everything. The airline isn't just trying to rebuild trust. They're facing the anger and sadness of hundreds of families who feel let down. The pressure keeps building. Staff at Air India feel it too, with some too scared to fly until they know more. Customers canceled tickets, and online chats exploded with worry. Tata Group knows this isn't just about planes, it's about their name. They're pushing forward with new safety rules and training, but every step feels like a battle. As they wrestle with this mess, another massive piece of the puzzle still unfolds: investigating what went wrong. The official investigation, expected to wrap up in November 2025, wants to figure out the real cause. The pilots, a broken system, or a maintenance slip-up. Teams from around the world are on the case, pulling apart the wreckage and digging through data. They're not guessing. They're hunting for solid proof, whether it's a design problem, a careless mistake, or something no one saw coming. Experts are checking every detail. They're studying the plane's parts, like the flaps and sensors, and matching them with computer records. Early clues point to a glitch in the system, which tricked the pilots into thinking everything was fine. But that's not the whole story. Could a loose bolt or a skipped check have started this chain of events? They're testing every idea, refusing to jump to conclusions. Reports so far lean toward a technical fault, not a human mistake. Still, the pilot's actions are under the microscope just to be sure. Out of the 274 lives lost, investigators know that even one missed clue could mean trouble for planes everywhere. The stakes are high and everyone's watching: airlines, passengers, even governments. Some companies are already rethinking how they train crews or buy new jets, all because of this one crash. The wait is tough, especially for those who have lost someone. Answers are coming, but not fast enough to ease the uncertainty. What happened up there? The truth is still out of reach, keeping the world on edge. While facts slowly come to light, one person's story cuts through the noise, showing the human cost. Vishvash Ramesh, the only survivor, lives with the constant pain of losing his brother right beside him, making this crash a profound human tragedy, not just a machine breaking down. Picture this: 2 brothers on a flight, excited to see family. Vishvash took seat 11A, and AJ, his younger brother, sat nearby. When the plane hit the ground, Vishvash somehow made it out alive. His brother didn't. That moment changed everything. Waking up in a hospital, Vishvash learned he'd survived. Then came the news about AJ, and it crushed him. He keeps replaying a simple choice. He could have swapped seats, maybe given AJ a better chance. Now, that thought won't leave him alone. His quiet words about the guilt and loss have reached millions, turning a big disaster into something personal, something anyone can feel. The crash didn't just hurt those on board. Down in Ahmedabad, 33 people on the ground lost their lives when the plane came down. That's 33 families torn apart, plus a whole city shaken up. People there stepped up, raising money, offering help, trying to soften the blow. Air India pitched in too, extending their support to everyone affected. Still, behind all the aid and numbers, there's a raw truth. These are real stories, not just statistics, and they make you stop and think. The questions keep coming. How could this happen? Who missed something? For Vishvash and so many others, it's not about pointing fingers, it's about understanding. Their pain echoes beyond the crash site, touching anyone who hears it. As the investigation digs deeper, the next chapter will explore what's left. Can trust ever come back after a day like that? The story of Air India Flight 171 is far from over. What began as a routine morning flight became one of the most shocking aviation disasters of the decade, shaking the industry and touching millions of lives worldwide. More than just a crash, it became a symbol of everything that can go wrong when technology fails and human instincts are ignored. For many, it changed how they look at flying, trust, and the price of silence. The truth poured out in pieces from the moment investigators pulled the black box from the wreckage. The flaps retracted too early, the cockpit displays misled the crew, and the automation never warned them of the danger. Every clue raised another question. Why didn't the system alert the pilots? Who signed off on the refurbished parts? Could this tragedy have been prevented if one more test had been done or one more rule had been followed? The answers remain tangled in technical reports and global investigations, but the human cost is crystal clear. Vishvash Romesh, the only person who survived, is now the face of this tragedy. His survival is no comfort to him, not when he watched his younger brother die in the seat beside him. The world saw him walk behind AJ's casket, a quiet figure carrying a weight no one should bear. In interviews, he speaks softly, always circling back to that moment. Why not him? His pain became a mirror for thousands of families who lost someone that day, and for those who narrowly escaped being on that flight. The numbers behind Flight 171 are staggering. 274 passengers gone, 33 innocent lives lost on the ground, and billions of dollars in damages. But it's not the statistics that keep people awake at night. It's the image of a plane dropping from the sky, warning bells screaming in a cockpit that no longer responds, and a pilot sending one final mayday before silence takes over. These moments define the actual impact of this disaster and make people demand more than just reports and press releases. Once a name for safety and innovation, Boeing is now buried under layers of doubt. The company has promised new safety checks, stricter oversight, and improved training, but those words ring hollow for many. In June 2025, their stock plummeted by 8%, and public confidence took a hit that may take years to recover. The fallout has been just as brutal for Air India and the Tata Group. Bookings dropped by 15% in the weeks after the crash, and public outcry forced leadership to appear on national television, promising change and transparency. Even so, some families feel forgotten. Compensation has been paid, funds have been set up, and therapy has been offered, but grief doesn't follow a schedule. For the families of the ground victims in Ahmedabad, the pain is even more confusing. They weren't flying. They were living their lives when a plane crashed into their world. No warning, no time to run, just impact, fire, and loss. The investigation is set to conclude in November 2025, and many hope it will finally bring closure. However, closure is not the same as justice. Even if a sensor or design flaw is found to be the leading cause, that won't change the fact that a chain of decisions, big and small, led to the disaster. It's a hard truth, especially for an industry built on trust and reliability. But that truth must be faced, or nothing will change. Aviation is already shifting. Training programs now include hours dedicated to handling automation failures. Airlines are rewriting manuals to include steps for dealing with misleading cockpit data. Engineers are working on more intelligent sensors and transparent systems that show pilots what's happening, not just what the computer thinks is happening. These changes are essential, but they come at the cost of 307 lives. It's a price no one wanted to pay and should never have been required. Flight 171 may never fade from memory. It has become a turning point, like the 737 MAX crashes before it. People will point to it in classrooms, boardrooms, and hangars as a lesson learned too late. But maybe that's the only way forward, to let the pain drive the progress. To remember the names behind the numbers. To ask more complex questions and demand more precise answers. Because every plane that takes off carries more than passengers, it carries trust. And once that trust is broken, rebuilding it takes more than apologies. It takes action. As the world waits for the final report, one thing is clear. Flight 171 was not just a crash. It was a warning. One that must be heard, understood, and never repeated.